Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, a little show that strives to bring forward the issues that you'll find interesting from British Columbia, Canada, the wide world, and of course locally. And speaking of locally, across town, it's the Croatian sensation himself, John Jurisic, also known to some as the Saanich Slicker. The Saanich Slicker. And Johnny, there's so much going on in town right now.
Robin, are there ever, so many things to talk about. So many. Perhaps we should start with a potential controversy.
A national issue. A national issue.
Motorbikes from across the country drove into Ottawa demanding the Trudeau government to scrap vaccinations and COVID mandates for all travel. Aren't they about 2 months late? Anyway, we've heard the same message, of course, from the recent truckers' Freedom Convoy. They called this operation Rolling Thunder. And while they came into town in big numbers and yelled and yelled and yelled about freedom, of course, contradicting exactly what they're doing in full freedom, there were no serious incidents, Robin. Apparently there were 39 vehicles towed. Well done, police. 550 tickets handed out, but no mass arrests. All of that said, you could see that the protests were trying to get in the face of media as much as possible.
We're done with criminals running our country. We are done with the Trudeau regime once and for all, and we will hold boys for the future generations to the end. Okay? This ends now, and the Canadian people will never stop until the Trudeau regime resigns once and for all. Love you all. Take care.
So when the truckers arrived in February, they, of course, were downtown in Ottawa, jamming the streets, honking their horns for 3 weeks before they finally had to change the laws, bring in special powers, and move them out with lots of arrests. Well, this time, things went more smoothly. The Ottawa police were on top of things, although there was certainly provocation on the behalf of the Rolling Thunder crew.
It's the difference between us and you. We're not going to relax. We're going to fight for what we believe, and we'll die on our hill. Yeah, honey, we're okay, princess. We're good. Yeah, we're good. Oh, no, I'm not angry. I'm just sick of fucking bitches like you. That's all. That's all. I'm not angry. Agitated? I swear, it's called vocabulary.
He's trying to build probably.
I understand you take the aggression out on your hair, but... Look at this guy. This guy's such a little princess.
Robin, we've spoken with Victoria lawyer David Busch about these types of anti-mask, anti-vaccine protests, and we ran his comments this past weekend. They were well received in that they generated a lot of comments, and we ran it as a Rumble Room News special. David Busch said he always supported the democratic right to protest. Don't we all? He also said he equally supports the right of anti-old growth logging protesters to march on government and demand change. But he draws the line, Robin, on shutting down the streets. I totally agree with him, and so do a lot of our viewers, and blocking highways and bridges. I think it's safe to say that the majority of the people watching feel the same way. Here's some viewer mail that we've received. One person writes, blocking highways and city streets is no way to peacefully protest. The fine should be $1,000 a minute for a blocked highway.
Here's another one, and this one is a counter to that. You missed the point. Our corrupt politicians will not listen to us. They only listen to rich men in corporations and industry.
Oh, vicious. And finally, there are ways to protest that don't involve inconveniencing the general public who really want to get on with their daily lives.
Great comments, John, and we really appreciate hearing from people, getting points of view on how people feel about ourselves and our guests and our opinion. And keep it coming. We like to see the mail and we like to share it. I also want to mention that I have myself listened to the truckers' protests. I've been down at the legislature and heard what they had to say. Some are against masks, some are anti-vaxxers. All of them have problems. that they feel surround government not listening or bringing them in on any of the decision making that's going on. Many people upset that they've been suspended or even lost their jobs because they refuse to have a vaccination. And now, I've strongly supported that people should get a vaccination in Canada. You and I, John, have both come forward with a strong thumbs up to get a vaccination to battle COVID-19. And, I'm sure now that I've had my vaccination, I feel much safer. Yeah, I could get Omicron. Sure, I could get sick, but I don't believe I'm going to die. I believe it's going to be okay. And thank goodness for the vaccinations. However, in the wake of this, people have lost jobs. And should that stand? Do they have a legitimate complaint? Should they be reinstated in their jobs now that the pandemic, at least the worst of it, has passed? Umar Sheikh is a Victoria lawyer. He's a former CEO with the BC Nurses Union and is going to court on behalf of government workers, transit workers, and others who have lost their jobs. And that was because of the pandemic, and they're seeking a right to express themselves now. Can they go against the mandate and be reinstated? Let's zoom them in. And joining us now in the Victoria Rumble Room for the first time is Umar Sheikh. And Omar, very nice to have you on our program today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, right off the top, we've just seen Operation Rolling Thunder storming through Ottawa. We heard again from anti-vaxxers. We heard from bikers and truckers shouting at the media, mocking police, screaming for Justin Trudeau to be removed. And, they are against the mandates universally. I think there are different things that they're upset about, but everyone seems to be against the mandates out of that crowd. And some of them have indeed lost their jobs. So what do you make of these types of protests?
I think we need to understand what's going on here as Canadians. I think that there's been a lot of absolutism that occurs where we're calling them anti-vaxxers or categorizing them as the other. These are our fellow Canadians who have experienced some significant harm over this pandemic, and we need to be compassionate and recognize that harm. In the case of the folks that I represent, they've lost their jobs. They've been on unpaid leave without access to any unemployment insurance. They've had no money, and when they do get fired, they get fired based on misconduct. So they don't get EI then either, and plus they have a termination for cause on their record. This is a disproportionate response. These people have been financially bankrupt. They've been hurt. They've been punished. They continue to be punished every single day that they're out without income. And they're stigmatized. And so, a lot of them are going to go out there. They're going to protest. They're going to say words like, unfairness. And that is true. It is. A lot of these mandates have come down unfairly. The mandates don't apply, for example, to the physicians. If you don't apply the same mandate to the physicians in the health sector, how are you going to apply them to the public servants that aren't in the health sector? That doesn't make any sense to us. And so there's lots of different ways this could have been handled. But what the NDP chose to do here was take a very heavy hand and decide that these people needed to be punished, and punished greatly for not obeying the mandate.
Omar, it's really fascinating to have someone with your perspective on the show. Thank you. I understand that you yourself are vaccinated, but you've taken on this file to go to court for people who've lost their jobs because they've refused to follow mandate protocols. Why did you personally decide to get involved with this?
So I decided to get involved with this because I've got experience dealing with the vaccine mandate issue. I was formerly the CEO of the British Columbia Nurses Union. I was successful in dealing with the vaccine mandate against that was put in place for nurses. That was taken out with a deal made by HEAVC and Bonnie Henry just before the pandemic was done. So that deal was made. They understood that those mandates didn't make sense, and it didn't make sense to punish and fire people then. That seems to have changed. Yes, I may have changed roles, but I still understand what the law was, what the law is, and what the appropriate response is, depending on the efficacy of what you're trying to push through. At the end of the day, there are three things that are important when we look at any type of charter issue or any type of bodily autonomy or medical privacy issue. We look at a proportional response. We wanted to make sure that it's proportional. We want to make sure that it's effective. What you're saying that you're doing is effective. And we want to make sure that it's equally applied to all. That's not happening here. And so there is a great injustice that's taking place for these people. We are at 2 doses. This is we are going to court in July, for example, for 11 public servants over 2 doses, not 3, not 4, not the next dose. And so this is non-compliance with what we all now say is an ineffective amount of vaccine to stop transmission regardless. And so if your objective was to stop transmission, you're not doing that with the policy you have. Therefore, your proportionality, your effectiveness is not there. You're then terminating for cause based on that, and you're harming these people considerably. That's disproportional according to me and according to what I see in the law. And you're not applying this to doctors. So
all right, but okay, that's a bit apples and oranges. You've already stated that once, and I'm not a judge, neither is John, so we're not trying this. We're just trying to get the information out of it. And a lot of people, and I'm sure, Omar, you would agree with this, were very upset when this pandemic began in the first place, and there was no vaccine, and people were feeling very vulnerable. And we saw all these reports out of places like China and Italy, where there were caskets going through the streets and people were dying en masse, and people were really upset. And I think people were joyous when the vaccinations occurred. And I can tell you for a fact that for myself, I'm triple vaccinated, and it gives me peace of mind. I know I can still get Omicron, but my chances of dying, I think, are very minimal. And I think a lot of us feel that way now. And so I think it's fair to say that most Canadians, and certainly in British Columbia, an overwhelming number have had their vaccinations, feel that was a good idea. And at least initially, we're not very pleased to see people, particularly in the healthcare field, not get vaccinated.
Yeah, but I think you're going off based on feeling. We were all collectively relieved. We were in a collective trauma that was taking place. That was a pandemic. At the time, I was the CEO of the Nurses Union, and I was on those calls that were happening every day with the ministry at the beginning of the pandemic, trying to understand what we were facing. And so we didn't know. And then, yes, we got a vaccine, and we were told this vaccine is safe and effective. And if you take this vaccine, we will get back to normal. That is what we were told. I bought into that. You seem to have bought into that, and so have many other Canadians. That is not what British Columbia ended up doing. That is not the reality of how this vaccine works. You said it yourself. You're triple vaccinated to protect yourself. I am not triple vaccinated. I am not getting triple vaccinated. I know that there are a number of British Columbians that are going to draw the line at 3. Perhaps they're going to draw the line at 4. But if you're not producing the results that you say you're trying to produce, and yet you're firing people based on what you say you're trying to do, it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so you have talked about the fact that you worked previously for the BC Nurses Union, so you are very familiar with that aspect of the union movement. My last question is really about how unions feel about this. I understand at Victoria City Hall, for example, the unions very clearly said they wanted people reinstated who'd been removed because they had refused to participate in the mandates. And Victoria City Hall has actually brought those people back. Do you see that as something that's going to be universal or common amongst unionized staff, at least, that the unions will back them in their return to work?
Yeah, I see a very troubling, and I'm going to say this in the most judicious way that I can, I see a very troubling relationship between the BCGEU and the NDP. And so there have been already terminations that have taken place of BCGEU government employees. That's already occurred. It's occurring now. There are hundreds of them impacted. I don't see them being reinstated or coming back. I don't see the BCGEU fighting for them or running campaigns to get these people back on some sort of pay or helping them in any way. And so there's some other unions that are involved in that. I don't see a massive union shift. If you look on the federal level, the NDP has tied itself to Prime Minister Trudeau, and they've been pretty clear that they're in line with whatever Trudeau's policies will be. The NDP over here is pretty aligned with the unions and the BCGEU. There was not very much pushback. I can tell you that the legislation that this was passed under required union consultation. So that's in black and white. And so any sense that the unions weren't consulted is nonsensical to me. So I don't know what they will do, but I do know that I am going to sue them all.
Such an interesting discussion, Robin. I know we'll get a lot of feedback from our viewers. You and I have talked now for the better part of, well, we've been online for a year and a half. We've been chatting about this for several years. And that's this post-COVID scenario and post-COVID consequences. I know we're not in totally post-COVID, but we quite possibly could be in a post-pandemic now. And here's one of the issues. It was great listening to Umar about how this is going to be handled, at least from his perspective. Still with health, but moving away from mandates and masks. Let's talk about the doctor shortage. Man, oh man, have we become part of this thing and this discussion, this very necessary community discussion. And, you know, of course, we're counting down, Robin, to the big BC Healthcare Matters rally on the lawns of the legislature on Thursday, May 19th. Between 11 and 1, you know, the groups organizing are expecting a lot of people to turn up and a lot of doctors. Nearly 1 million British Columbians no longer have a family physician. Just think about that, Robin. 1 million people in Canada. I can't even believe I'm saying that. And the public is getting agitated. I'm getting agitated. Robin, I was very pleased. I'm very pleased to see you involved. I'm involved. I have a banner on my lawn. I was really pleased to see that you went out to cover a Healthcare Matters speakers event. Let's take a look.
BC Healthcare Matters held a public event at the Montreal Recreation Centre. A nice turnout, quite a cross-section of people to hear speakers, including a couple of doctors.
Since I am a mom of relatively young kids, I took on what is considered a part-time practice. Yet I carry almost 1,200 patients and not infrequently will work 60 to 70 hours a week. Much of that work is done after hours. The minute I tuck my kids in bed, my computer comes out and I chart until, almost always till midnight and frequently until 2 or 3 a.m. every single night, weekends included. And because I'm not in front of a patient, none of those late night hours are paid.
And if you do not have this experience or cannot find a family doctor, or see your family doctor suffering, working endless hours to keep their practices afloat, with increasing wait times to access their care, we have to ask why. Where in the administration and government decisions and policies, what's gotten us here?
Also included in the presentation, a few stories about people who could not find a family doctor and the suffering they went through. It really rang home the issue.
My daughter died of bowel cancer just after her 18th birthday. If she'd been seen regularly, perhaps she would still be alive. We have in this province a healthcare crisis. I've lived in third world countries with much better access to doctors. Please help us.
So a very good event, and a big one still ahead. On May the 19th at the legislature, it's going to be a massive rally. It's BC Doctors Day. 1 out of 5 British Columbians does not have a family GP, and people are saying it's just not good enough.
And it strikes me that opinions vary on what could be done, but there's a lot of people that are very concerned and very unhappy about the status quo.
Yeah, definitely. I think that even though there are a variety of opinions on kind of what people think the fixes might be, it definitely resonated through this room today that there is one thing that we all absolutely agree on, and that is this system is in crisis, it is crumbling, it's failing, and the government, no more short-term solutions. We don't want to hear about them, we want to see action now. Everybody is getting on board with this because we know how to collaborate. We realize that the citizens, the doctors, the nurses, we all need to come together and we need to express and show that our discontent and to proceed with our calls to action that we want immediate change.
I always love the energy of Camille Curry. She's doing such a fantastic job for all of British Columbia. Please, if you haven't done it yet, sign the petition for BC Healthcare Matters. It's on Facebook. Just take you a few moments time. It's a really worthwhile cause. And of course, the big rally is on the 19th if you happen to live on the island. So John, a couple of quick things to say before we wrap up. First of all, get a load at this table. This is Vladimir Putin sitting down with the head of the United Nations about the war in Ukraine, and people wonder if someone will assassinate Putin. Well, it won't be easy because he's so far away from everybody. The longest table in the world for one of the meanest, most evil people. It would be funny if he wasn't such a criminal to humanity.
This guy, that is Putin, is such a terrorist. In the worst way, they kill without remorse. And that's what's happening. Someone needs to bomb these tables. That's what they have to do. You know, we're keeping an eye on that terrible situation in the Balkans, and continue to support the Ukraine as much as we can. And, you know, and this stuff is so, you know, all encompassing. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere comes, you know, quite a bit of sad news that many of us at our age anyway take very personally. That's the passing of Guy Lafleur, the great Montreal Canadian forward.
It was really a terrible bit of news we got just a couple of weeks ago now. Guy Lafleur, the flower, golden hair waving in the wind as he raced down the wing to score amazing goals, died at the age of 70. And Lafleur scored 50 goals 5 times. He won 5 Stanley Cups, 14 years in the NHL. And I feel I have a kinship with him in a funny kind of way. I met him twice in my life. I met him once as a teenager. My uncle took me to a Vancouver Canucks game where they hosted Montreal, and of course Montreal won. And then he took me down to the area where the dressing rooms were. He got a special pass for us, and so we're down there, and the door opens, and out comes Guy Lafleur, and he's in this amazing suit, and he's looking really slick. And there's all these young women at the door, and they all go, "Oh!" They were all just so thrilled. There's about 4 of them. They're just almost swooning. And he comes up and he signs their autographs and gives them all a peck on the cheek. Oh. And I just stood there thinking, this guy is like a rock legend. He's like a rock star. It was amazing. Yeah. And then we fast forward to the, I believe, late 90s. And Guy Lafleur was out in Victoria doing a promotional tour and was signing autographs at Thrifty Foods in Fairfield. So he's sitting at this little table, and I went up and I shook his hand and met him and talked to him for about, I guess, 30 seconds or so. And he couldn't have been friendlier. And there was such charisma there. It was such an honor to meet Guy Lafleur. He was one of the greats. He's like Gordie Howe or Maurice Rocket Richard, these legends in our culture, and a very sad passing. So au revoir, Guy Lafleur.
What great memories, Robin. Like you've kept that hidden from me for a while. That's amazing. Those impressionable years of our lives, those ones from about 13 to 18 for any young person, was when I watched Guy Lafleur and those great Canadian teams of the 70s. And I'll never forget that goal that he scored. I think it was Game 7 against the Boston Bruins. And yes, it was just sort of, that was, I'll never, akin the Bobby Orr jump when the Bruins won the cup against the Blues. Yeah, what luck you've had to have those couple of experiences, Robin. So anyway, great memories for all of us. And before we go, a reminder to all of you on how we can follow the Rumble Room, and you can share with these amazing memories like this. And I might add, so a couple of things. First of all, thank you very much for watching, everyone, all of you. We're getting a lot of people. And I might add, if you watch to see us in our interviews, that's great. But there is a ton of comments. Like there's a whole other, life going on, another world that is supporting our show. So join the Rumble Room and support our little program. And you do that by going to Facebook. You can go to Twitter. You can go to YouTube, where all of that would be great holiday viewing for y'all. Of course, there is Instagram and TikTok. Boy, TikTok was active this past week with our Dave Busch clip, must say. And then please consider joining the Victoria Rumble Room News and Views. It's a Facebook group that allows you to talk about your events, to talk about your organization, and to talk about your opinion. We provide a venue for you to do that. And as ever, I remain the king of Tulip Street. I remain the sandwich slickster, and I remain the Croatian sensation, Johnny Jurisic.
And John, I just want to add one more for you, because in my building, there's a fellow who comes from Zambia, and he thinks you're great. And he actually comes from Zambia. He's a Zambian. And he says, you know, I really like that John Jurassic. And I go, John Jurassic? And he says, oh, yes, that's how you say it in my country. So you can add it to your list. I'm Robin Adair, and rumble on.